welcome to Public Forum. I'm Amandra Bhatt. Today we talk about the worsening migrant crisis that has engulfed the European Union. Europe is facing the largest migration crisis since World War II as record numbers of people flee violence in Syria, Iraq and Afghanistan as well as conflicts across North Africa. More than 300,000 people are thought to have made the perilous journey to Europe this year and over 107,500 of them in August alone. As this number continues to mount, thousands are dying en route and many are being violently pushed back at borders. Amid mounting pressure and criticism over its failure to respond to the situation, the European Union interior ministers discussed ways on Monday to spread the number of refugees across its member states. Many countries have made it clear that they are against any plan to impose quotas. Meanwhile, the plight of thousands of people seeking refuge worsened after Germany reinstated border controls, a move followed by other European countries like Austria and Slovakia, and Hungary decided to shut its border with Serbia. So where does all of this leave the refugees? Today in Public Forum, we discuss Europe's migrant crisis. What are the pressures faced by different countries in the European Union? What are the biggest obstacles to a solution? And given the political climate in Europe, how will the bloc deal with the intake of refugees? And to discuss Europe's migrant crisis, we have with us in the studios an eminent panel. Please welcome Srilkant Sharma. He is a former envoy to the IAEA. He has also been a former Secretary General of SAARC. Welcome to the program, Ambassador Sharma. Sitting next to him is Professor Sheetal Sharma from the Center for European Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Welcome to the program, Professor Sharma. We are also joined by Ranjit Devraj, a regional editor with the Interpress Services News Agency. Welcome to the program, Mr. Devraj. Ambassador Sharma, let me begin with you. You know, clearly an unprecedented crisis of mammoth proportions unfolding in front of our eyes. You know, what we are witnessing, perhaps, you know, when it comes to the situation in Hungary in particular, tensions along the Hungarian border with Serbia. We saw hundreds of furious people tearing down the wire that separated them from the Hungarian territory. We saw the police clashing with the protesters. We've seen distressing images in the media of these refugees, particularly children. And how the situation in some of these camps, you know, it's been described as fit only for animals. How do you view the situation unfolding, particularly, you know, in countries such as Hungary and their response to it?
The southern European countries,
right.
Hungary and flanked by Croatia on one side and Serbia on the other side, they are bearing the brunt of the refugees coming from, you know, from the east. And Hungary has been trying to cope with it, but they are, you know, limited in their resources. Then the people in Europe are also exercised about it. So there is a wind of very strong conservatism which is blowing in these countries. So they have no sympathy for the refugees, and that is betrayed in the way the Hungarian police used water cannons and tear gas. And according to the Medicines Without Frontiers, you know, the French organization, the NGO, they say that they have detected rubber bullet wounds in some of the refugees. So this is the kind of attitude they have. And you know, the European Commissioner Avramopoulos, who is the Commissioner for Migration, he's come out very strongly against Hungary, saying that they are not on the side of history and they don't realize what is driving these refugees. They are losing everything. They have nothing to look for in the countries which they have left behind. So they are just coming. Now Hungarians say that there was a terrorist there who was trying to lead the mob, and they say that there are people who are trying to lead this mob to break the barricades. That's why they had to resort to this. Croatia says that from Hungary, since Hungary has stopped this, there are about how much 6,000 refugees now in Croatia because they were not allowed to go through Hungary.
Right.
And they are not actually coming to Hungary. They want to go north through Germany. But Hungary does not want to let them go through their country because they don't know how many will stop and how many will pass through.
Right.
And all these countries, their own populations are smaller, and their law and order machinery also doesn't have so many people. Like Germany, which is the largest country, even there, the commissioner for migration has tendered his resignation yesterday, and he cited personal reasons. But apparently, the burden in Germany, for instance, 7,000 unpermitted crossings over the last 24 hours from the Austrian side into Bavaria. And they are saying 4,600 are waiting for further crossing.
Right.
This is in Germany. German police says that there are traffickers amongst the refugees who are actually involved in trafficking these people.
Right.
And they have detained something like 800 these unscrupulous traffickers in Germany. So these numbers are large. German system is very efficient, but even a most efficient system will crack in the pressure of these refugees.
Absolutely.
And the pity is that all kinds of forces are working on them. I mean, you have traffickers, you have all kinds of criminals who might be involved in trafficking these people. And if you look at Turkey, for instance, which has had 2 million refugees ever since the war began with Syria, their camps are in a bad way. So they are now telling refugees that either you stay in the camps or go to Greece and go to Europe, but they don't want to allow them anywhere else in their country. So there is this problem of the refugees moving out of the areas which are earmarked for them and mixing with the population. And that's where the Europeans fear, because in Germany has said that they could be terrorists. Why Germany? But even the Pope, who's known to be very liberal and very kind and one of the most humanitarian popes, he apparently a statement was attributed to him that that some terrorists might be hiding inside the refugee flow. So this is the kind of a problem which has multiple dimensions.
Right.
And European Union is trying to cope with it. They are giving, they are offering all kinds of assistance. But the governments are in a
they have their own political compulsions as well. We will discuss them a little later in the program. Professor Sharma, how do you view, I'm beginning with Hungary's response, because its decision to shut its border with Serbia has been seen as the most forceful attempt yet by any European country to stem the flow of refugees, and Hungary has been singled out in its response to this problem, and they are ignoring all of the criticism that they are facing.
Amandra, I'll begin by quoting the statement made by the President of the European Commission, and he said it very clearly that he sees there is not much Europe left in the European Union, and there is not much union in the union itself. Now this states the current affair of things, what are happening in Europe. Now every social phenomena has a set of causes and consequences. Now if you look at the causes of migration, the short term or the immediate causes that we see are poverty, war, hunger, famine, all around. Even if we look at the 3 destinations from which people are reaching now in greater and greater number, North Africa has a different sort of political and social turmoil along with poverty. Syria is not as poor or less developed, where where we are seeing people are fleeing because of the atrocities by the IS, and then we have people moving from the Balkan regions to the western part of the Europe.
But the Syrian crisis is the main driver.
Syrian crisis is the main, because this has only led to massive influx of people in the last 1 month or so. And the problem now is getting greater and greater. What started as a humanitarian problem now is becoming a security issue for the European Union. And when the European Union started discussing it with other member states, say eastern member, western member states, bigger member states, smaller member states, suddenly the cracks between the European Union are emerging. Now if we were to look at the European Union, it's only at the time, the testing times are the times when you test the strength of the union or any kind of friendship. And this is for the first time that the union has faced this kind of crisis. Post-enlargement, after the middle of the last century, when 10-15 Eastern member states joined European Union. Since then, this is the first crisis, apart from the global recession and the crisis in PIGS countries. This was a testing time for them to stand united, to show their strength, show their unity, but somehow they are now showing that who will take the burden, who will take the responsibility, and that is why Hungary, the other Eastern European countries like Slovakia, Hungary, Austria, all these people are showing a kind of reluctance that they do not want this kind of entry through their border and all these security issue, giving refuge to these people. All these issues are coming up and they are being discussed and debated, and they are becoming the fault lines on which Europe possibly might show a kind of disharmonious relationship between all the member states.
All right, Mr. Devraj, clearly is there an argument that the sharp criticism that Hungary is facing actually masks the far more fundamental problem, the lack of a unified approach to deal with this problem within the European Union?
Of course, you have to start with the geographical location of Hungary. It's on the edge of Europe, right next to the Middle East. So it takes the brunt of this crisis. But the crisis itself, who's responsible for the crisis? And whoever started this should have foreseen these problems. I mean, you don't start trying to unseat Assad, President Assad, without knowing what's going to happen. Because, if you look at the larger issues here, they are the Western powers looking for a regime change here. They say they are not mincing any words there.
Right.
But what are the consequences? Are you going to be able to carry this through, or is it going to be bloodless? Now, once you started, you set in motion a whole, something like this. You should have the, you should have the sense of fairness to take some responsibility for this. Okay, you can't just dump it on Hungary. Why didn't they provide resources to Hungary to deal with this? Sure, Hungary has limited resources. The police are stretched, the army is stretched, and so on. And there probably is not their war, really. I mean, the refugees are not interested in staying in Hungary. It's a poor country. They just want transit. They want to move on to countries which are more friendly, which are more amenable to taking on refugees, like Germany or Sweden. And it's just this transit. But Hungary is probably not looking at it that way. Hungary sees Western Europe as a source of employment, of income. Many Hungarians actually are working in Western Europe now, young people. They feel that if you let in the Syrian refugees and other Iraqis and whatever refugees, their chances become limited. See, there are just so many jobs you can get in Western Europe, I suppose. So there is that rivalry too that you cannot ignore. So the interests of Hungary are not the interests of other members of the European Union. So it may be, the West may have certain ideas in mind in trying to unseat Assad. The Hungarians are probably unconcerned with that. They are concerned with more day-to-day affairs, finding a job, that kind of thing. So the thing is, there should have been a concerted European effort in this. People should have been educated. I mean, at least the Hungarians should have been educated about this, about what they're going to face. And they should have been prepared for this. But that hasn't happened, very obviously. I mean, the Hungarians, it's not just the police. You see images of even journalists trying to attack the, there was this case of a woman anchor who was actually kicking a child.
Right.
So how does that happen? Because it happens because the Hungarians don't have the same outlook as somebody in Germany or Sweden, who have a more humanitarian approach. I mean, they're more.
And that is perhaps a symptom of a larger problem within the European Union.
They are not at the same levels.
Right.
East Europe definitely is not, at the same level of economic development as the West. I mean, these are the, you're looking at the post-Soviet era situation where a large number of East European countries are simply struggling to catch up with the rest of Europe.
Right. Ambassador Sharma, you wanted to come in here?
No, I wanted to say that Hungary, people are smart, but they have the zeal of the new convert. When we used to be in Vienna 10 years back, Hungary was not part of Schengen. We had to take a separate visa. So they've just joined Schengen, say, last several years. And it is a Schengen requirement that those on the borders should provide the protection for the Schengen area. So all these stringent regulations which they are imposing, which the Hungarians are doing,
Right.
they actually were part of Schengen requirements. So they are saying that we are trying to protect the European Schengen area
Okay.
according to rules. However, the situation is extraordinary. The rules which were framed for peacetime are not anymore applicable.
Right.
So that's why Hungary, and actually Hungary and Austria, they are both in consultations because they fear a right-wing, ascendance.
Okay.
Particularly, in Australia, in Austria they say Ausländer aus. That means the foreigners go home. That has been the slogan for a long time. So they don't like them. Hungary also has the same problem. So they are cautious. And they are trying to deal with this situation with their best ability. Talking about what was mentioned about the reasons, Martti Ahtisaari, who was the former president of Finland and who was a Nobel Peace Laureate, yesterday he's come out with a statement that in 2012 the Russians had offered a 3-point proposal for solving the Syrian crisis, and the Russian permanent representative in New York, whom he had met, whom Ahtisaari had met, said that there are 3 points, and so when he broached these points to the other P5, to the Westerns, that means UK, France, and USA, he said they dismissed it, because at that time in 2012, they were quite sure that Assad was a man of few days.
Right.
His departure was imminent. And Russian proposal talked about stopping armed assistance to the rebels, starting negotiations, and then they envisaged Assad's departure in the course of negotiations. So these people felt that this could be another Russian way of stalling the whole thing. So they dismissed it. But Ahtisaari said that that was a way we could have solved the problem. At that time, the refugees from Syria were only a few thousands, not this 2 million or like that.
Right.